Hello and welcome to yet another episode on the Stretch Street podcast. This is the energetic EJ and I'm super excited to be here again. I think I'm super predictable. I should change something about that, shouldn't I? I'll think about it because, there's just a thin line between being consistent and predictable and being dynamic and very spontaneous. And, for the longest time, I used to pride myself and say, "Ooh, I am very spontaneous and I just love being spontaneous. Anything that has to do with routine is boring and all of that." But man, life has taught me that routines are a lifesaver. Like there are areas of your life that you just need to put systems in place and structure. And those would look like routines, right? And they will just guide your life. And then you can give a little bit of space for, spontaneity and fun and all of that. But never say never to routines and structures and systems. I'm telling you that one for free. All right. So today on the show, I have a special guest, somebody who is quite interesting. Before we turned on the microphone, he was telling me, how he has a lot of Nigerian friends. And of course, if you don't know, now you do know I am Nigerian. And as he was mentioning, people he knows like from the part of Nigeria, and he mentioned my people. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's not very common that you find people mentioning my tribe. Mostly people would just generally mention the three major tribes in Nigeria, namely Igbo, Yoruba, or Hausa. But he was like, I've met people, Ijaw people, Ishekiri, Urobo. I'm like, what? Who is this guy? Where did you meet these people? And so I know that today's conversation is going to be fun. And not just because, he's kind of affiliated to Nigerians as he has a couple of Nigerian friends, but because what he does is very, very interesting. And I myself, I am really curious to know more about what he does and to understand, some of these things. It's not something I'm very, very familiar with. So I would be learning as much as you are learning today. My guest today is Marc-John, and he is the co-founder and co-director of Native Wisdom Hub. This ethical for-profit organization seeks to help steward the world's fastest emerging psychedelic renaissance and industry in ways rooted in ethics, responsibility, and integrity. This wasn't always Marc-John's position. However, whilst a student of Indigenous wisdom tradition since his late teens, he qualified as a language interpreter and translator at age 22. And from age 24 onwards, he opened 6 companies, launching 2 of them fully before crashing and burning in 2018 and 2019. This burnout led him to his deepest calling, Indigenous wisdom traditions. Today, a co-founder and a co-director of Native Wisdom Hub, Marc-John gets to exercise all of his greatest passions, combining said traditions with his love for his performance, community building, and deep healing in a business environment that offers coaching, teaching, mentoring, ceremonial healing, and retreats, striving to help people reach the very best version of themselves at every juncture. He also has a private practice in what he called integral performance coaching, which is a holistic life coaching for high-performing athletes, politicians, entrepreneurs, and change makers. Quite a bio right there. So who is Marc-John? What is he made up of? What is this psychedelic thing going on? What is this indigenous thing going on? These and many more we're going to find out. Just before we go is to let you know that, he hit that rock bottom at some point, but he was able to find his way back. So what happened between rock bottom and finding his way, and what are some life lessons that he has learned on that journey? These and more are what we are going to be unpacking in this episode. So please do not go anywhere. Grab your cup of tea, your cup of coffee, or your bottle of water if that is what works for you. And let us get to meet my guest today, Marc-John. I'll be right back with my guest.
No matter how dark the night is, the sun always rises. No matter how hard life gets, keep moving forward. You never know what amazing things are waiting just around the corner. No story is too rough and no journey is too tough. Join us on Stretch Street to be inspired by the stories of people who have been through it all and come out stronger. Stretch Street Podcast. Stretching without snapping.
Hello, Marc-John. How are you today? Thank you for coming on the show.
Hello there. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be sharing this space with you.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so before we dive right into the conversation of all these terms that you need to unpack for me, tell me one fun thing about you, something fun that most people might not know, but it's truly fun about you.
I am the most silly slapstick person at home with my kids, and like 90% of my life is lived joking and playing around, just being so silly with my children. Not many people know that about me because they always see me showing up seriously as, the entrepreneur and the leader and whatever, but when nobody is looking behind closed doors in my home, I'm so incredibly silly, slapstick, and just love rolling around being silly with my children.
Oh, that's so sweet. I can just imagine the picture and I can just imagine, anytime you walk into the room and the excitement on your kid's face. How old are they, by the way?
I have a son who will be 4 on the 21st of November. My daughter is 11. She just turned 11 in September. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well done, Daddy. Okay, that's fun to know that you have a silly part to you. So it's good to know that. And I'm hoping that once in a while, that silly part comes out, like just sips through when you're in the office or in coaching or whatever it is that you do per time, and people can just experience that naughtiness that comes with being silly as a dad with your kids. But thank you for
Thank
sharing that fun fact with us. All
thank you.
right. So I'm just going to dive right in, right? So as part of your, when you filled the form to, book your slot for this session, you gave some insight into, what you like to speak about and what you are about. And you mentioned that, you had to return through suffering and feeling lost, to
Mm.
get back to your core, to this person who feels like you are now more certain about your purpose and about why you're here on earth. Can you just tell us more about that period of struggle? What does that look like? And how are you able to find your way here?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think before I go into it a little bit, a little bit more deeply, I will say that there is a meme somewhere out there that has like two lines.
Mhm,
One is straight and one is like super curly and all over the place,
mhm.
but generally traveling in the same direction as the straight line. And it says like what people think success looks like, straight line from start to from bottom to top. What success is really like, all over the place.
Stangled.
Yes, 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 exactly. So I say that because 2018-19 is when like the big crash and burn came, but
Mm,
then also in 2000 and like the beginning of 2022,
20.
2022 up until like I don't know, for the first like let's say 8 months 7 months of 2022, I also had like a significant challenging period,
Mm,
right, that I had to come through, and all of it is just like all of it has just like really rooted me deeper and deeper and deeper, into my being, into who I am, why I'm here, where I've come from, where I'm going, what my gifts are, who I'm here to serve. All of that, all of the pain and the struggle has taught me who I am, taught me all these things. And so to answer your question, to go back to your question and discuss the kind of crash and burn in 2018-19, I was so I guess through immaturity and maybe
mm,
some ignorance and naivety, but not lacking courage. I was very courageous. I was courageous, and like people are like, oh, like I feel so scared to just make a start or
mm.
launch or whatever. Like I had none of that. I was just like, boom, let's go. Like let's do this thing. But everything has its pros and its cons, right? There are
Right.
pros to that attitude, in that wow, you go out and you get things done, but like the con for me back then was I was too confident. I was too confident. I
Mm,
thought that I could do way more than I was actually capable
capable
of
of.
back then. Yeah,
Hmm.
I bit off more than I could chew, way more than I could chew. And I learned a really harsh lesson. So it's like of all the six companies back then that I kind of opened between like 2013 and 2000 whatever it was, 18, 19. I built two of them, but the way that I built them, they were both overlapping. One was
Mm,
overlapping the other, right? So I had occupying like I was a new father By 2018, 19, my daughter was already like 6 years old. And these two businesses that I had, one was a language company servicing the development of the AI voice recognition technology of one of the world's big tech giants in
Oh,
eight
wow.
different languages, right? So we were
Mm,
working in eight different languages, developing the voice recognition technology of a big tech giant, one of the biggest, tech giants out there. And then the other one was operating serviced accommodation across two cities, right? I mean, completely unrelated businesses, like
right.
uh, now at this stage of my life, there are multiple like operations, but they're all related. They're all interrelated.
Hmm.
Back then, I was running these two businesses that are completely like not related. So and they were both pretty young businesses, and so operating both of them, like starting both of them almost at the same time. You know, oh my goodness! I look back and
What were
I'm
you
like,
thinking?
yeah, 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 totally. Who did I think I was back then? Like really.
Superman.
Yes, Superman. Yes, exactly. Thinking. I remember saying that to one of my friends. Like, I literally thought I was Superman. What was I thinking? Yes, I believe I'm capable of holding all this energy and like managing all this amount of business, but like it's just illogical to launch such significant businesses that are completely unrelated at once. There's a saying that says the hungry man that chases two rabbits remains hungry. Chase one rabbit, you might catch it and heal your hunger. So end of 2018, the language company. In 2017, in the space of 5 months, we built a team of 270 freelance workers across the world. 79 of them, yeah, 79 of them servicing assignments for us in 8 different languages. By month 7, the tech giant brought in a new project manager who just decided they didn't really like us and removed 5 of our languages and left us with 3, which took a big
Wow.
chunk of
Of
our
your team
cash
off.
flow out.
Mm,
But by that time, my attention had already been stolen. One, by the serviced accommodation business, but also because I had seen how we could build in this impact arm to the business and use the technology to save and restore indigenous languages, right? Like, so I started to give a whole lot
mm,
of my energy to that. And then all of a sudden, like, I left my business partner in charge of everything, basically, whilst I went to go and build this project and the other business. I just like, yeah, you know, I think I'm pretty much through and out the other side of all the shame that I felt when I crashed and burned.
mm,
But like by the end of 2018, there were a number of complications also with the serviced accommodation business.
right.
None of the properties were owned; they were all rented commercially by the
Mm,
company. And like pop like popcorn, pop pop
just,
pop.
oh my gosh.
Things just began to
Fall
undo
apart.
themselves. Yeah, bit by bit, pop pop. Oh, another piece, another piece, another piece.
Mm,
And then I just like flopped. And yeah, for the first 3 months of 2019, I did nothing. I did nothing
mm.
except for sleep, do the martial art that I practice, and like take my daughter to school or pick her up from school. That was all my life consisted of.
Wow, for 3 months,
Um,
almost 90 days, which is actually significant, when you think about it in hindsight. 90 days is a cycle. It's almost like if you wanted to probably launch a vision as well, or launch or start a new goal or something. 90 days is a sweet cycle to work through it. And you had to almost go through recovery in that season. What was in that season, what was the biggest thing that you had to deal with? I heard you mention shame a little bit, but what was it, just shame, or was it something else? And how were you able to just crawl out of that rabbit hole? Because I mean, we've heard of stories where people don't come back from that kind of like fall. How did you do it?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I have to say that my family
Mm,
is a big source of strength for me. And just seeing my daughter grow and knowing that
mm,
like she is, why I began business, or one of the biggest driving reasons that I began, building business in the first place. and of course the nurturing support of my wife, and that really, really, really helped me. And yeah, I think I actually have a free gift that I offer to people now that's called Trauma to Triumph. It's a free guide for literally turning your trauma to triumph, because I went through this whole process with myself, where, and of course with the support of my wife, and with the presence of my daughter as well.
Mm.
I went through this whole like self discovery process, where I
Right.
just like took off all the masks, and like got real with myself, looked at myself in the mirror and said, like, really, what was this all about? Who am I? Why did this happen? Why did I even begin in the first place?
Mm.
Like, what was my purpose for beginning in the first place? And reconnecting to that why, that began the whole process of like
Right.
rebuilding, and I studied coaching, and of course nobody studies coaching at the beginning for other people, even though they might think that they're studying it for other people. Really, it's for yourself, right?
Tell
So
me about it. Tell me
yeah,
about it.
yeah. So through this process of becoming qualified as a coach, like I transformed, because I was coaching myself and like going through
Yourself.
all of these processes of deep personal inquiry, and that's how I began to rebuild. That's how I began to
Mm.
rebuild, and
Mm.
uh, and that's when I finally, decided to like take the plunge and go down to my wife's native country of Peru and live in the Amazon jungle, and begin to study like closely with one of the tribes down there. That's what really like was the
Why Peru? It could have been anywhere else. Why Peru?
well. It's a great question with multiple angles to the answer. One is, well, it's my wife's native country, and I met my wife in 2009, early 2009, after I'd just like hitchhiked my entire way from Argentina through Chile and Bolivia into Peru. I met her there, married her in Peru. I was drawn to South America in the first place because I grew up from age 11 here in Scotland with Argentinians and Paraguayans, and so I speak the language. I speak the
Mm.
language fluently. I've been speaking it since I was like 15. That's what took me to South America, and then of course I met my wife in Peru. It's my wife's country, but also because since age, I can't even remember what age. I think I was like 22 as well. The same year I qualified as an interpreter. I began my like healing path with a plant medicine from the Amazon jungle called ayahuasca, and this is what finally drew me down to the Amazon jungle, where the medicine is from, to go and discover this medicine, and begin to really like look through my childhood, and work on my childhood, and work on beginning to become the adult that I wanted to become,
Mm.
right?
To
So
be. Mm.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
that's why Peru. That's why
All
Peru.
right. So what is this? What is this medicine you speak about? Is it like, when you say medicine, and then when you talk about the Amazon jungle and things like that, for me, what's coming to mind is, okay, it's almost like going back to traditional medicine in back home, for example, and that means concoction. So like leaves, putting leaves together, cooking it, and then drinking that. What's this medicine you speak of?
Well, that's exactly it. You've just said it. You've just said it. Like putting leaves together with putting the leaves of the chacruna plant together with the bark of the Banisteriopsis capi vine. You combine these two, they are the core ingredients, and it gets cooked over 4 or 5 nights. And as my interest has deepened over the years, I mean, I've been studying these traditions since like 2008, 2009,
Hmm.
roughly around about the time that I first met my wife. As I've gone deeper and deeper and deeper and expanded more and more over the years,
Hmm.
like I do have my eye on an African tribe that is not so far away from Nigeria. They're called the Bwiti people, and they're based between Gabon and Congo. They work with a really powerful medicine as
Are they
well
like
called
Djibouti?
Iboga.
Where's the country?
Gabon and Congo, like
Okay.
bordering. They
Mm,
are based in the jungle there, in the forest there, and there's a medicine there that's called iboga. So
mm,
I have my eye on at some point going down there as well to explore those traditions more. But yeah, for the past 16 years, really, it's been earth-based wisdom traditions in general, and for the past 16 years, it began 16 years ago in the Andes Mountains between Bolivia and Peru with the San Pedro cactus. But since
mm,
2011, it's been ayahuasca. And, to answer your question, yes, that's exactly what it is, a concoction from the Amazon jungle that's a mixture of two different plants that you drink in a ceremonial healing environment that helps you to dig deep into your subconscious mind and unearth the deeper levels of subconscious drivers in your life.
mm.
Things that might be limiting you, things that might be keeping you suffering, things that might be holding you back and keeping you away from happiness, right? Yeah, and I think all of these traditional healing methods that are predominantly laced with and permeated by these plant cactus fungi medicines, this is what is forming the psychedelic renaissance that we speak of, and that
Mm,
our organization that I co-lead with my wife is seeking to help steward in ways that take care of the practices.
mm.
Um, yeah, it's a big
You know,
topic.
exactly. It is. It is. And I'm just like my curiosity radar is just going bang, 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 bang. But I am curious to take you back. Like, what was the initial interest in this path? Like, what was that thing that got you? Because you said even way before, 20, before you were 22, before you became an interpreter, you've been studying these traditions. What was it? What was that interest in the first place? What led to that interest in the first place?
It's a very good question. And curious minds will be curious minds, eh? And will receive interesting answers. So here is your interesting answer. Because I was drawn from a young age to South America,
Mm,
particularly Argentina and Paraguay, because I grew up from age 11 with an Argentinian family, and then age 13, another Paraguayan family, kind of magically through destiny, pure destiny. It formed part of that as well. So I was like so heavily influenced by Argentinians and Paraguayans, from age 11. So much so that by age 15, I was completely bilingual in Spanish and English. That drew me by age 19 to live in Argentina because I just wanted to go and like for me, language is the doorway to culture, and
hmm,
culture is the doorway to human hearts, and
hmm,
that is like a big part of my life. So I just wanted to go
hmm.
down, live in Argentina, use my language skills to gain access to the culture, embody the culture, and allow myself to gain access to the hearts of the people there, and
Wow.
really gain new connections. So I did, and
Hmm,
when I did that, I went through this big like spiritual awakening, if that's what you want to call it, this big awakening to like the divine, the more spiritual aspects, elements of life. And this unlocked a level of freedom inside of me that
hmm.
I hadn't felt before. And so I just took to the streets of Buenos Aires in Argentina, and I sold all of my belongings, my 100-liter backpack, my Armani jeans, my diesel t-shirts, and all this stuff. And I hitchhiked like this, thumb out, getting picked up by cars and trucks and lorries and stuff, from Argentina through Chile into Bolivia, and through Bolivia into Peru. But that's the crucial part, was when I was passing through Bolivia. Hitchhiking is not so common
Hmm.
in that country. It's common in Argentina and Chile. They're more like advanced countries, more privileged countries, if you
Right.
want to say that, economically advanced. Bolivia is like not, and there's
Hmm,
still a lot. Bolivia is like almost like, it's a very high percentage, probably like 90% indigenous, right?
hmm,
Like as high as that. I think it's, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine it's something like 90% indigenous population. The way that they travel between villages and towns and cities is predominantly because they can't afford the public transport fees. There is this whole system of commercial vehicles, like construction vehicles, subsidizing, giving like subsidized travel fees, where they just put
Put
lots
people
of
at the
people
back.
in the back of the truck, right? I'm sure it happens in Africa as well, right?
Right.
So I was traveling with these people. I was traveling with them in the back of the trucks, and with the Aymara and the Quechua people from the Bolivian Andes, and watching these people. Bear in mind, I'm going through this spiritual awakening where
Mm.
I'm connecting with the divine, and like experiencing my own spirituality for the first time, or for the most significant time, and then bang, I come face to face, literally squashed in the back of a truck with all of these, local native Bolivian people. That is where the seed was planted. And I learned about their spiritual traditions there. I learned about the use of the cactus in ceremonial healing settings. And then I had my first San Pedro cactus ceremony just on the border of Peru and Bolivia before I crossed into Peru. That's where it was all planted. That's how it developed.
Wow. This is a whole journey. You should write a movie out of it and just give us an
I will.
expose of what that felt like. I'm like, ooh, what? You're saying all of this, and for somebody like us who have just lived most of our lives in what would I call it now, civilized environment, and have
Orthodox.
no idea about all this bougie thing you talk about. Like, ooh, like I mean, I could relate a little bit, with the concoction thing, because I mean, we grew up with all of that, right? Like when you from birth, like that's part of the
Yes.
thing that you be washed with as you're coming out of the womb. We have all the different kind of concoction, for the babies to keep them healthy and things like that. So I can relate with that part. But you taking it a step further, into connecting with the spiritual awakening and divine is just quite interesting for me. And part of the things you said, you talked about, now you know your purpose, now you know who you are, now you know why you're here. So I'm gonna ask you just right on. Who are you? Why are you here?
So, my primary role, it's so obvious. I'm sure even just from speaking with me, you are maybe also realizing that, like, I stand between worlds. I'm a bridge builder.
Hmm.
I will sit down and I will, like, play the talking drum with the Yoruba people, and like I will go to the Igbo weddings and drink from the horn, like,
So
and,
you've drunk palm wine like this.
something like that. Yeah, and as my Yoruba friends, they said, you have to remember, you are going to eat the chicken from the bone. No, none of this boneless chicken. Eh?
Oh
Yeah.
my
So
goodness.
that's who I am. That is who I am. Literally, that is who I
Hmm.
am. That is who I am. I merge worlds. I bring people from different backgrounds together and help be a bridge between people.
Hmm.
And I'm here to do exactly that. I'm here to do exactly that, and it's what we do. It is what
Hmm.
Native Wisdom Hub does. We make campfires, and we bring Westerners around the fire with indigenous representatives from the tribes of the Amazon jungle to help gain a sense of reconnection with what these indigenous people have and what our modern
Hmm.
society has lost, which is an intrinsic, intertwining, symbiotic relationship with the natural world that is almost
Hmm.
personified, right? Um, so that is who I am, and and why I'm here.
That is very, very interesting. And I'm trying to connect the dots here. You mentioned you building a business around language. Was this before what you experienced, or was it after what you experienced?
Oh, that was 2017. Yeah,
So it was
yeah.
after this whole experience you had.
Yes, yes, and of course, a core part of my entire journey since that moment, which happened in 2000, and it happened in February 2009. Like,
Mm,
that was when the passing through Bolivia
mm-hmm,
happened. The
mm-hmm,
spiritual awakening happened between August 2008 and January 2009, and then I took off
mm,
from Argentina through Chile and Bolivia. And when I reached Bolivia, it was like, I don't know, February 2009, roughly. That's when that happened. and so the spiritual that whole exploration continued to develop. But as I came back and came into contact with this society again, and like wow, just needed to make money, and like find a way of like utilizing my gifts to turn
Mm,
it into a profession, and become a professional. Like that's when I qualified as an interpreter and translator. And then of course all of that was put on steroids when I became a father, and it's like provide, make money, like grow, yeah, yeah. But then
Responsibility came through. Hmm.
right, exactly. And but then all of that came through the crash and through the burn in 2018 19. It made me come into contact once more with my why, with my who am I, with my
Hmm.
why, with my who am I, with all those questions that I mentioned. Who am I and why am I here? Why
Hmm.
did this happen? And that's where the alignment between who I actually am,
Hmm.
what my biggest joy is, and what my biggest passion is, and what my biggest gifts are, come into alignment with what I put out into the world.
Right. That's beautiful. So, in finding your gift and purpose, right, were there any unexpected challenges you had to face, or it could be beliefs that you had to unlearn to get to where you are now?
Um, yeah, I mean, I've had, because I come from like a broken biological family that is not in any way, financially wealthy.
Mm,
Like there's no inheritance being passed down. There's no property, so I really had to overcome that mentality of
mm,
like not being capable of achieving, not being worthy or capable of achieving the big things,
Okay, okay. I'm just going to pause you right there.
uh-huh.
Earlier on, you mentioned about the courage that you had, even though this courage was naive, right?
Ah, yes.
So, how did these two play together? So, was it after your experience that the courage was birthed, or yeah,
Yeah,
help us connect the dots. Yeah.
this is the spirit of a coach. I see that coaching spirit. I love it. So the courage to go out there and actually take the action towards achieving the big thing was there, but the
Hmm.
belief that it was actually going to happen was not. Yeah,
That's a good one. That's a
yeah. So
that's
the
a good. Just let's unpack that right there, because I
yeah,
think that's such a powerful insight that a lot of people miss.
yes,
That you could have the courage, and it is why a lot of people do and just keep doing, but they're doing so much, and the result is not correlating with the amount of energy that they're putting in. This is the missing link. The belief that goes with the doing, the belief that everything that I'm doing right now is going to bring me results. But a lot of people actually do it from the place of, well, let me just do it. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe, maybe not. And of course, life is going to say, okay, maybe, maybe not. Maybe you don't need it. Maybe you do. Wow. Please go ahead. I just had to. Whew, that was good.
that's it. Well, you brought it out. You brought it out with the question, right? So, and I nobody's really asked me that question before. Like, hey, stop for a minute. You said you're courageous and weren't fearing doing these things, but now you're telling me this. So, and yeah, it
That's it.
actually felt a little bit uncomfortable to be confronted in that way. Like, whoa, okay, let's stop and actually reflect on that. And yeah, there's the answer. That is the answer. That is the answer. Which of course I know and I have known, but to be
Mm.
able to articulate it in that way, right, is yeah, yeah, action, courageous action without belief or self worth is like running on a hamster wheel.
Oh my gosh. So good. So
Yes.
good. I need to write that down because that's going to be the quote for the week. My goodness.
There we
What?
go.
What? Say that again one more time, please.
What was it? Let me see. Courageous
Courageous
action
action
without the belief
without the belief.
that it's actually going to happen
Ooh,
is like running on a hamster wheel.
actually, oh my goodness, to happen is like running on a hamster. Whew. Like I'm literally having goosebumps just right. So
There you go.
so good. I love it. Thank you. Thank you for doing the work. Thank you for going on that journey. It's just interesting. It really is interesting the journey that you've been on. I could stay here and unpack a lot, but because of time, a lot of people learn in different ways. And
Mm.
sometimes people like to highlight, okay, one, two, three. These are one, two, three things that I want to leave you with. So, in that way, I want you to just kind of, with your journey and everything you've just shared with us, what are three lessons that you can leave with anyone who listens to this episode to say, if you heard nothing else, these are things, lessons that I've learned from my journey that I want to leave you with. I'm giving it to you. Do with it what you wish. What will those lessons be?
Find a way in every single given moment to root back into faith that
Hmm.
what is happening is not happening to you, but is happening for you,
For
right?
you.
Yeah. In every moment, like even in the struggle, find the grace, that is gifted to you by this notion, this knowing that this is supposed to happen. This is part of the process.
Hmm.
It's part of the growth. As disgusting as it might be, like, because it can be like, wow, it's so disgusting. Why is this happening? Find grace in the knowing that it's supposed to happen, and it's a process of you being molded into who you were born to be,
To
right?
be. Hmm. I love that.
um I think the other thing as well is there are many roads that lead to Rome. Let's just say there are many ways for us to break through financially, mentally, spiritually, psychologically, emotionally. There are many ways. And that whilst, it's always good to consult like professionals, there are also alternative ways for us to dig deep within ourselves, to heal ourselves, to cultivate our own health and well-being that perhaps existed before the notion of professionalism even existed, right?
Hmm.
um yeah, I think that's another one, a big one. And I think that the third one is for anybody really that's suffering out there, or that's like in that process of trauma and failure, maybe failure. I put it in inverted commas because every single failure
It's
is just one
feedback.
more step towards success,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But it can be hard.
Right.
And,
It
you
is
can
hard.
suffer.
Yes.
You can be bathed like I was bathed in shame. Like, what the hell
Hmm.
just happened? How is this happening to me? Who am I? Like, what am I worth? I'm worthless, all this stuff. Be gentle with yourself, nurture yourself. There are three points of contact to at least begin, maybe not complete, but begin the process of recovery and recuperation, and that is self, community, and nature. When we
Hmm.
can come into contact with ourself, yeah, and nurture ourselves even with a warm soup, or a nice hot cup of tea, or whatever it is, just saying yes to that desire that you might have one day to wrap up warm and stay in bed, like, or stay on bed, stay on your bed reading a book, or just being quiet and not interacting with the world. Like, gift yourself with that if that is what you need. That's self. And then community is like, well, who do I love and appreciate? Whose energy do I feel nourished by, and how can I bring them into my space right now? you know if it's a phone call, or a bus trip, or whatever, or a phone call to say, can you come over and visit me and spend some time with me, like that, being in community. And hey, even better if you can do it in contact with that third point of contact, which is nature. Like, if you can do that around a campfire, or something as radical and crazy as I might do, which is climb a tree, with a friend or whatever, be up a tree, or be out in nature, be on the edge of a lake or a river or whatever, self, community, and nature.
Community and nature.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so lovely, so lovely. And even as she gave those different scenarios and different point of contact, like you said, even as a Christian, I can relate so well because I don't believe that God created us to live in isolation. So as
Right.
much as you connect with yourself, you need that community. And I remember when you were saying, one of the things that kept you going in those 3 months that you did nothing else, just wake up, take your kids to school, which is the fact that you have your kid growing around you and like, okay, I'm responsible for this person. And also you having your wife support you to say, okay, we're in this together. Just that little support through that season gave you the energy to want to wake up the next day and then the next day. And even though it took 3 months, to come out of that space, but you were able to just come back and say, okay, how can I connect? What's missing? Who am I? And went through that journey to reconnect, to embrace the community, and to also tap into nature. And your story today for me has just brought to my own consciousness again the power of nature, that the word was created for us.
Right.
It was. I mean, I'm just going to go there just briefly, because even when I look at it now from what you're saying, from looking at it from the point of the scripture, it's like in Genesis, talking about the creation, God created everything before he created man.
Right.
So he created nature for us. So if we are not leveraging it, it's on us. It's on us, really. But God has placed every single little thing, the air, the plant, the animals, everything for us, which ties back into what you say, to say, whatever it is you're going through, always just try to hold on to that notion that this is painful, it's hurting, but it's happening for me and not to me. Thank you
Right.
so much, Marc-John. You have really, really made an impression on me. I love it. I was looking forward to this conversation, and I'm not disappointed, to be honest with you. Like, okay, I was like, okay, what's this conversation? How is this conversation going to go? I'm like, you know what? Just be curious, stay curious, and just enjoy the conversation. And I must say that I truly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you. If somebody want to connect with you, how would they do that?
My Instagram is Mark John Brown. I'll give you the handle MarcJohn. Also, you can find me on LinkedIn, Marc-John, Brown, Mark John Brown. Our website is nativewisdomhub.com. And I will also send you a link to that free gift that I mentioned, right?
Right, right,
Because in that, so I mean, it covers quite a lot of what we've touched upon today about recovering from the trauma of failure and whatever. But
right.
there are some like nitty gritty details in there
In
about like the
there.
specificities of my failures, and so I really give quite a lot in that free guide.
Right.
And yeah, just I lay it out step by step.
Mm,
Step one, step two, step three. Yeah, how to pick ourselves back up from the trauma of failure,
mm,
failure in inverted commas, because like
absolutely.
it's not definitive, it's just another stepping stone to the
Right, to the
success that
next
we're here to.
level. I
Yeah.
love it, love it, love it. Thank you. It's been a pleasure chatting with you on the show today. Thank you for being a gift to yourself first and then to the world as you share your story. All right, guys, this is where we draw the curtain on this conversation. I really do hope that you had a great time as much as I did, because if you didn't, I'm so sorry. I'll be selfish in this one, but I had a great time on this conversation. And I'm hoping that if you missed out on anything, you would go back, listen to it again, and I hope also that you can share this with somebody who's going through some tough seasons, just to let them know that tough seasons would always come. Like, we can't escape it as humans. And as long as we live in this broken world, we will continually go through tough seasons. But when we assume the posture to keep questioning, like, why is this happening? Okay, why is this happening for me? What is this? What is here for me to learn? Then we're able to distill all these life lessons that you can then come and share on one podcast or the other to say, this is what I learned, and be a source of encouragement, hope, inspiration to somebody else on your own journey. So I hope that Marc-John's story has, really touched you the way it touched me. And I hope you've learned a thing or two from the conversation today. Until I come your way again next week with yet another guest on the show, this is the Energetic EJ, and this is the Stretch Street Podcast. I'll talk to you next week. Bye bye.